we're focusing on the Petrolia site today only because they celebrated their 100th anniversary earlier this week, Monday to be exact, January 31st, 1911. So 100 years of wonderful service, and when you sort of look, and unless there's some great medical breakthroughs, you and I will not likely see the conclusion of the next 100 years. But it's sort of when you look into the future, what do you see as far as the CEE site is concerned?
I think that the community is quite vibrant, and I think the hospital is fairly vibrant as well. I think it will continue to service the community with general medical services. That's pretty much what it has today. It has some diagnostic services, the emergency and urgent services. It has ambulatory care services, physio, some inpatient beds, and some complex continuing care beds.
Right.
And then it's also 2 years ago, and we're just in the process of celebrating the 2nd anniversary about this time, opened the Pat Mayo Cataract
I want to ask
Center.
you about the Pat Mayo Clinic, because obviously I was there when they had the initial kickoff to get things going before even a hammer was swung. But I mean, it's come to wonderful fruition, and it's active, and there's people there all the time, and it's just been sort of a great success story that maybe doesn't get as much attention as it should.
It has. It's the wait time for cataract surgery was well over 2 years before it opened across the province, not just in our area. And the wait time now is 2 months. And generally, if it's urgent, it can be worked in. It operates. We do about 1,700 cases a year with the current level of funding. It does have capacity for growth. If the funding becomes available and the need becomes greater, as we all age, cataracts I think exactly, are something that most people don't avoid, and so it's there for us. And again, it's very active. It's state of the art. It's extremely efficient and effective, and patients quite like it. The patients and the people who have experienced it.
Right, and still really Dr. Patodia is kind of the
Dr.
cornerstone
Patodia and Dr. Ibrahim, both,
okay.
And they share the resources, and they share the amount of time. I think they've got equal time.
Right. I'll put a plug for Dr. Patodia because he's done some work on my eyes.
Oh, there you go.
It's been good. Tell me a little bit about the staff at CEE Hospital in Petrolia. I mean, they're staff anywhere probably they're sort of the unsung heroes. They don't get the attention that maybe some other people do for a variety of reasons. But just tell me about the staff.
The staff in Petrolia are dedicated. The staff, all of us staff at Blue Water Health are extremely dedicated, and you see that in days like today. So I know that the staff in Petrolia today are working extra hard to make sure that we're able to provide as many services as we possibly can on a day like today. And they go above and beyond continually. Many of the staff, the long-term staff, the long service staff at Petrolia refer to CEEH as Charlotte's house. Some of them actually say that Charlotte still walks the halls. I think you have to believe in that sort of thing. But no, the staff are committed. They're caring. The hospital opened with a foundation of providing compassionate and caring service and care, and that continues today. Continues today.
Right.
Healthcare is a lot of emotion, and that's what keeps us going.
You mentioned a little bit earlier before the break about the hospital foundation and how it sort of financially came to be and that sort of thing. What sorts of avenues do they go down by way of raising? What do they raise money for?
Everything. Okay. Equipment, building, construction. They raised over $600,000 for the Pat Mayo Eye Clinic. So that's a significant portion of the monies that were required. Diagnostic equipment in the emergency, ultrasound units, any and all equipment that we use. They can't raise money for operations, so they can't raise money to pay for staffing or personnel hours. They can raise money for recruitment of physicians. They can raise money to, their mission is to provide services, to raise money for healthcare services.
Right.
That allows them to raise money to support physicians coming to the community and to support the family health team as it gets up and running.
Right. We had Cindy Schulten on last week talking about doctor recruitment, that sort of thing. We talked briefly about sort of the situation in Petrolia, and it's, you know, a little bit in flux, I guess. Is there any sort of update as to recruiting new physicians there? Or?
No new physicians. We apparently have some lines on some physicians who are currently residents, so that would mean the June timeframe,
right,
when they would graduate. Sometimes residents want to work in multiple locations before they settle into a single location.
Sure.
But we're on one of them has us on their list, so
Sure.
that's promising. We'll have to woo that individual to come here.
I guess as in my younger days anyway, I mean, they were kind of known as, some of the volunteers around hospitals were known as candy stripers and that sort of thing. I mean, is there still that dynamic in hospitals where there's volunteers and people who give of their time?
We have youth volunteers and we have adult volunteers. They're all volunteers. In days gone by, there was the Guild, and it's been around for almost as many years as the hospital.
Right.
And it has evolved. They still run the gift shop at the hospital, and they continue to raise funds for the hospital. They like to put their funds to the smaller items that are actually involved in direct patient care. Lifts and some of the items that are very close to the patient care, as opposed to the large capital, large expensive items. Beds, mattresses, so chairs.
Right. One of the other things that was noted in the release as it pertains to the anniversary is a new anniversary book that's out. Vec Dudek has written a book about CEE Hospital and the history and that sort of thing, and we invited Vic to be on the show, but he's a little bit of a shy individual and didn't want to didn't want his own personality, I guess, to overshadow the book and so on. Have you read it?
I have my own copy.
Yeah.
I actually have my copy with me.
Okay.
It's an excellent book. It's extremely well done. It covers the history of all three of the sites, as well as there's a lot of interesting pieces of information with respect to the history of healthcare. So the discovery of penicillin is in there, or the discovery of insulin happens to be in there, and that's overlaid on something that's happened with one of the sites during that particular year. So it's extremely well put together. Everybody has received the book very favorably. It's very much a lovely keepsake forever.
One of the things that I noticed in the book, and I just found it very intriguing because we don't always think of sort of maybe how far advanced, if that's the right word, we were 100 years ago. But the superintendent of the hospital, the initial superintendent of the hospital in Petrolia, was a woman. Right?
Well, and she
Vera
probably
Baker,
was a nurse.
Right.
She was a nurse.
But I mean, we don't think of that from a perspective 100 years ago. We kind of think of it sort of being a male-dominated world, right? So
well,
we were ahead of the curve, I guess.
And for many years, it was, and now you see more nursing leaders back at the helm in the leadership position of hospitals.
Right. One of the, and we may have touched on this a little earlier when we talked about doctor recruitment and so on, but one of the issues that, you know, obviously has been on the minds of people in the Petrolia and Enniskillen and Oil Springs area is the coverage, if you will, for the ER hours at the hospital. Where does that stand right now? I know that it's been covered to a certain time frame. Do we have any sort of update there?
Well, our contract actually goes to the end of March,
right.
And I guess I'm confident that Health Force Ontario will renew that as long as we need it. We have a number of physicians who actually drive, many of them from London,
right,
and provide shift coverage. The fact that we're able to work the 12-hour shifts for the physicians has made a difference to their life and their livelihood. They're able to work a shift one day and then be able to cover their office the next, where previously they worked 24 hours, they couldn't go into the office. They weren't, it just wasn't safe
Exactly.
for them or the patients. So right now, we're able to cover the shifts. We are covering the shifts. Our physicians are able to get some time off. We have some locum physicians. We have some physicians who are working, again, in that multiple location type. So we're able to keep the shifts covered. But really what we need is to recruit some new physicians.
Just for people, sometimes when we use terms, people might be scratching their heads and wondering what we mean. What do we mean when we say a locum physician?
Okay, sorry. A locum physician is a physician who has a practice elsewhere, and they will come and do a shift or even a week of shifts sometimes. So that means that they're on staff in another location, similar to Health Force Ontario, but they might not be in the Health Force Ontario pool of physicians.
Okay, no need to apologize, by the way. I just thought we'd clarify that.
Well, you know, we use those terms, I don't even hear them.
Exactly, and I mean, that happens in any business, right?
Yeah,
The same
I suppose.
here, people would use some term and a person off the street would say,
Well, I'm glad you asked.
have no idea what you're talking about, so there you go. I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about, just sort of generally speaking, we had a chance to talk before the show began. You've been at the helm at Blue Water Health now for going on 4 years now. So how's, I mean, are things going well? Are they sort of unfolding the way that you had hoped they would? Or?
Things are going well. It was never my vision to be the CEO, to be a CEO, and I've been at Blue Water Health for 5 years. I can't believe it's 5 years. Time just flies.
Right. Yeah.
And started as the interim CEO in August of 2007, and officially in March of 2008. So you're right. It's about 4 years, and the building project has gone smoothly, well, as smoothly as building projects go.
Sure, that's right.
But it's been on time, it's been on budget, it continues to be on time, on budget. We're making changes, we're continually improving care and care opportunities. We've received a portion of our post-construction operating funds so that we can expand the services. We continue to be able to recruit staff and specialists to the area and to the hospital. So I think it's moving quite nicely.
Right, right.
Budget has been balanced for the last two years.
I was going to say, I guess in your most recent meeting, the things were looking up with a little additional money and, you know, that sort of thing from the province, so that always helps out, right?
It's an unusual conundrum that we're in this year in terms of having post-construction operating dollars coming our way. That requires that we have to achieve growth to keep that money.
Right.
So it's a very fine balance. You need to make sure you're able to grow before or as you spend the money, because if you don't, when they do the reconciliation, they'll take that money back.
Now, when you use the phrase, you have to grow in order to sort of keep that money, what do we mean by
The money
growing?
is based on volumes.
Okay.
So it might be a patient visit,
Okay.
it might be a clinic visit, it might be what we call weighted cases. So every admission is a case, and then the seriousness or the number of resources that applies a weighting. So it might be a weighted case. So inpatient beds are all by weighted case. So that's, you grow those weighted cases, and the money follows and stays. And then after a period of time, it becomes permanent into your base budget.
Right. We wanted to, I'm just going to give the folks in the studio maybe a little heads up. We just wanted to take a quick look, if we could, of those graphics as far as the upcoming events are concerned, just so we clarified a couple of dates, if we could. I'm not sure if we can or not, but we'll wait and see if those come up. But there's a couple things coming up. The commemorative Engelhard Garden is coming up Saturday, May 14th. There it is on your screen. We just verified that the date is June the 12th, the Strawberry Social at the Farmers Market in Petrolia in back of the library, and November 12th, which is the day after Remembrance Day, obviously, Saturday, a banquet and gala and auction at the Plimpton-Wildbank Agricultural Society Hall. That's the hall on the west side of town, down by the down past the Alliance Hall. So some very exciting events coming up, and we thank you.